Hello, friends. This is Dave Hurwitz, executive editor at ClassicsToday.com, here with the Haydn Symphony Crusade. And now we're batting cleanup, as they say in the baseball business. That is, we have 3 more pieces to talk about that are not part of the 104 standard numbering of the symphonies, beginning with what's called often Symphony number 105, but it shouldn't be. It's the Sinfonia Concertante, a standalone work that Haydn wrote during his first visit to London. So it's a late work, and it's a fabulous work. Oh my God, it's marvelous. There are, in the repertoire, there are only 2, count them, 2 great symphony concertantes, or Sinfonia Concertantes. There's Mozart's for violin and viola, which is a knockout and the really great exemplar of the form. And then there's this one, which is hardly known. I don't understand why. It's brilliant. It's fabulous. It actually influenced quite a few 20th century, some 20th century works like Martineau's Concerto Grosso or Concerto for the same combination, or Symphony Concertante, actually he called it. The combination here is the soloists are violin, cello, oboe, and bassoon. So you have, a soprano-ish and a bass-ish or baritone-ish of the string family and the woodwind family. And what Haydn does with this little quartet is just astounding, fabulous. What really blows my mind is that Mozart wrote a concertante for 4 winds. And that gets played all the time, but it's not by Mozart. Nobody thinks it's by Mozart. Maybe some of it is by Mozart. It only came to light like in the 1860s or something like that. I don't know. And it gets played constantly. It gets played constantly because first desk wind players and orchestras like to do it. It has Mozart's name attached to it. It's a terrible piece. It really is. It's you listen to 5 minutes of it, you just say, that's not Mozart. No way. But the Haydn, on the other hand, doesn't get performed at all. I've never seen it programmed, ever. I'm sure at some point someone does it somewhere, and one of you will tell me where your local orchestra is doing it. But boy, it doesn't get that much attention. It's had a lot of recordings, in conjunction with the rest of the symphonies, and deservedly so, but it's such a brilliant and wonderful work. It came about by an interesting set of circumstances. Haydn's pupil, Pleyel, was competing with Haydn's impresario, Solomon, at the time that Haydn arrived in London. And Pleyel was basically active in France, where the Symphonie Concertante, or Sinfonia Concertante, whatever you want to call it, was very, very popular. And, lots of people wrote them. The Chevalier de Saint-Georges, who conducted Haydn's Paris symphonies, he was a big Sinfonia Concertante guy. So Pleyel was in London, and he was writing these things, churning them out. They were doing very, very well. And so Haydn's concertmaster Solomon said to Haydn, listen, you gotta do one of these. So Haydn wrote one, but only one, because after that his symphonies conquered the universe, more or less. But until then, he had this single exemplar of the form. And if he'd done more of them, of course, they would be possibly a little bit more popular. But wow, what a terrific work. I mean, I just listened to it a few dozen times before doing this video, because I wasn't really all that familiar with it, to be honest with you. And it's so typically Haydn. It's so typically Haydn in ways that we will discuss quite shortly. Haydn and Pleyel, by the way, had an interesting relationship because Pleyel was Haydn's pupil, and they were very cordial to each other. But apparently, there was a lawsuit that happened in the UK that Haydn and Pleyel wound up giving testimony because one of Haydn's UK publishers stole a work by Pleyel and passed it off as Haydn's. And whether they did that with Haydn's approval or not, it's a little bit cloudy. It really is. But anyway, they were called in to testify. It was a whole thing in the days before copyright. And Pleyel stole stuff from Haydn, and that got published under his name too. I mean, everybody was doing it from everybody back then. So there isn't any moral opprobrium associated with the episode. And in fact, the two guys got along fine. I mean, they had lunch together, they hung out. They were just on fine terms, but they had partisans. And as today, or always, there was always politics in the arts. Who would have thunk it? So anyway, this is a 3-movement work, and a Sinfonia Concertante is simply a symphony with a clump of soloists, more than one, usually. That's the basic definition of what they are. You could take any number of people who you wanted to feature, and you feature them throughout the work. So it's a cross between a symphony and a concerto. But when it has 3 movements, it's really a concerto. It's a concerto grosso, sort of, where you have a large ensemble and a small ensemble. And Haydn has a quartet of instruments that he writes for so beautifully. You wonder why he wouldn't have written like separate chamber works for this layout. It's just wonderful, the sounds he gets. And we really don't need to worry much about like form in this particular piece, because whatever form it has, that is, whether it's sonata form or a rondo or a variation or whatever, it's all going to get sort of blown out of the water by the fact that we're just going to be enchanted by the infinite combinations of interplay between the various soloists, 4 of them, and the soloists and the orchestra. And, you can have duos and trios and solos, and the orchestra pops up here and there. And it's all just so constantly fetching for your own auditory system that, you don't really care what the form is. And I don't really care what the form is. I mean, the first movement's in sonata form. The second movement's sort of a variation-y kind of thing. The last movement's kind of a rondo-y, sonata-y thing. It doesn't matter. We're going to have a much better time just listening to the samples and listening to how Haydn uses the timbre of the instruments and creates constantly shifting kaleidoscopic colors. It's just incredibly beautiful writing for the instruments themselves. But there is one point that I want to make, which just is so, like I said, it's so Haydnesque. The entire piece is monothematic. It really is. You wouldn't think it, maybe on first hearing, but every single theme, beginning of every single movement, is based on the opening phrase from the first movement. And I've created a little comparison here so that you can hear that. I play the opening phrase of the first movement, then the opening phrase of the finale, then the opening phrase of the first movement again, and then the opening phrase of the slow movement. The reason I put the slow movement last is because that's the version that may be the hardest to hear the similarity, because it's ironically because it's the simplest. The opening theme is ya da 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 da. But the important part is ya da 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 da, and the finale comes in with da 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 bum ba da 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 da. I mean, it's ya da 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 dum bum ba da 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 da. It's the same thing, right? Only minor differences. It's faster. Haydn doubles a couple notes here and there, turns it into a slightly different tune. But the slow movement is just 4 notes. Ya da da da. So it's ya. I have to get my keys right. I'm going to get all messed up. But it's ya da 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 da, and then ya da da da, which is ya da 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 da. That was so much easier if I play it than if I sing it. But the bottom line is, it's all the same tune. It really is, and that's like kind of cool. I mean, that's very Haydn, because what he's doing is he's compensating for the fact that he's not going to be doing a lot of complex development and formal stuff, because you've got 4 soloists and the orchestra, which means the thematic material has to be relatively short so that everybody can play it 100,000 times, however many times he wants to do it. And it's all going to get, sort of developed and toyed with in the course of the work. So to make our lives easy and give us that amazing coherence that Haydn is famous for, he writes the whole piece based on that single opening theme, which is quite amazing. So here is the comparison with opening theme, third movement, opening theme, second movement, just so you get them, hear them a few times, get them in your head, and then you'll hear the similarities. You'll hear it quite clearly, I'm sure. Here you go. That was Adam Fischer with the Austro-Hungarian Haydn Orchestra on Nimbus / Brilliant Classics. A lovely performance, by the way. And so that's the basis of the whole work. And with that said, we now listen to the exposition from the first movement. Now, this is very interesting in another way, by the way, because we're used to concerto forms, particularly by Mozart, where there's this big, long orchestral introduction, and then the solo comes in, and then they work out their relationship together with very long first movements. This whole piece is about 20 minutes long. The first movement is about 8 minutes, and the first half of the movement, which is what we're going to hear, is all exposition. It's just exchanges between the instruments. They come in right up front. They emerge from the larger orchestra. And we're not really sure what Haydn would have done in a larger sense had he been a concerto composer. He never had the opportunity to apply his formal genius to concerto form generally. That was Mozart's thing. And Haydn stayed clear of it. Haydn was very shrewd. If somebody was like the best at something, Haydn just didn't do it. So there are no Haydn concertos of the scope of Mozart's. His two great concertos are all for unusual forces. It's this one and the trumpet concerto. There's also a double bass concerto, which was lost. And we play the two early cello concertos because they're also for unusual instruments. But Haydn's vision of concerto form never quite coalesced the way Mozart's does. That doesn't mean it was immature or there was anything wrong with it. It's just that each work has to be investigated on its own, taken on its own, its own basis. So here is the long and delicious exposition of the first movement. marvelous? Yeah, it is. Oh gosh, it's gorgeous. It's so much fun to listen to. I mean, you just never know what's going to happen, and that's why that wonderful thematic coherence is so important as the work goes on. Now, the soloists there's a little short development for the soloists, there is, and then a recap ending, which is abbreviated, typically with Haydn, ending in a fabulous cadenza. Now, the cadenza, as you may know, is supposed to be improvised by the soloist. But when you've got four people playing simultaneously, that could be a little problematic. And so Haydn gives them a cadenza, but he writes the whole thing out himself. And it is so poetic and so charming. And the end is delicious when they all come in with little trills and then the bassoon goes... I mean, you just want to kiss it. That's how charming it is. So here is the cadenza leading to the end of the movement. The slow movement, by contrast, which, as I said, is based on this beautiful, beautiful tune that is related, derived from the first phrase of the first movement, it's almost a lullaby. It's extremely lyrical. The soloists are very gently accompanied by the orchestra. There are only a couple climaxes. It's similar formally. I'm not going to talk about form. I can't help it. I'm a form whore. It comes out. There's nothing I can do. It's similar to the slow movement of Symphony number 102, which would come later, of course, where you have just varied repetitions of a whole sequence of lyrical ideas. Incredibly lovely. And you just want to pay attention to the different combinations, the different colors, and the different soloists and what they do. So I'm just going to play you the first couple minutes of it. You can't really excerpt it anywhere. I mean, the pauses, it has pauses. They don't occur at the joins between sections. Those are very fluently worked out. They occur, in the middle between phrases and things to create moments of pathos or touching sentiment. So I'm going to play the first couple minutes and sort of stop where there's a pause. But you have to listen to the whole thing. It's about 6 minutes. It's really, really lovely. Here it is. we come to the finale. Now, the finale begins with an operatic recitative for the solo violin. The solo violin leads this ensemble. I mean, it was written for Salomon, Haydn's concertmaster, who was supposedly a fabulous violinist. He obviously was comfortable in very high positions, as you're going to hear. Haydn writes some really serious high notes that don't sound typical of works of the classical period that weren't written by violin virtuosi for themselves. So Haydn was paying attention to who his players were. And it begins with this operatic recitative that's really, really fun. It starts with a version of the tune, the rondo theme. It's not quite finished, hasn't quite gotten to its final shape. It arrives at its final shape after the recitative, and it's about a minute long. And if you know your opera, your Baroque and classical opera, where you have accompanied recitative, the soloist sings some text about how they're ready to die, or they want revenge, or everything sucks, and the orchestra's going da-dum, ba-dum, like little broken rhythmic things between each verbal expostulation. That's exactly what's happening here. The violin is speaking to us, and you get to imagine what the violin is saying. And once the violin has said its thing, the sonata, rondo, whatever it is, finale thing, gets underway. And it's just light and breezy. The tune, it's just fabulous. And we're going to hear it many, many times. So I'm going to play you the first chunk, the first heap of that. And as with, the slow movement and elsewhere, Haydn is really, really careful to write continuous joins between the various sections, because he's got these soloists who are like all just, full of excitement to do something. And so he gives them things to do, even where the music is sort of moving from one section to the next section. So here is the opening bit. And with that delicious operation, all that is left is for us to talk about the coda. The recitative returns very, very briefly, just for a last reminder. And then there's the big wind-up, and everybody gets something to do, to shine one last time before the piece ends with Haydn's traditional 3 final chords, chung, chung, chung. So we know it's a Haydn symphony, concertante or not. And here is the coda. Really a masterpiece. I mean, a light, breezy, enjoyable masterpiece that should be played like constantly every 15 minutes. It should be, but it isn't. It's a crime that it's not better known. It really is. I can't understand it. I can't understand it at all. It's probably because there's only one of them by Haydn. And since there are 104 symphonies that everybody ignores, well, only one of them by Haydn. Are we surprised? If there's only one of something, that it gets roundly dissed by the universe at large? Well, we don't have to diss it. It is stunning, stupendous. Give it a listen. You're going to love it. You are absolutely going to love it. It's going to become a favorite, I swear, at least for a while, until you hear the other 10,000 other favorite things by Haydn and everybody else. But it's a great work. It's just a great work. It's a joy to get to know. So keep on listening, friends. Thanks for joining me. Take care.